Schusser learning should be a Pemsea. We're going to start from Mem Test. I have marked down Mem Test. Iboilo. See, Iboilo is it's about 12 lines from the bottom. It's right in the middle of the page, right? See the page looks like this? You know how to do the numbers? Maybe it may say 98. Okay, Iboilo, they asked the question. Shachat umes. We mentioned this before. The Kohen Gadol shechs the par, and then he passes away. Maushi kanisach b'damei. Can another Kohen that's taking him over, another Kohen Gadol, can he come in with the blood of the first par that was shechted? So we learned before that there was a limud that says par v'lei b'damei shel par. Rabbi Chanina taught us that. Well, now we're going to discuss this. Do we say what's the pasuk? It says that this is how Aaron should come into the holies. That was another point. That was midam. This now it's how does Aaron come in? With what? With this Aaron comes in with par ben bakar, with the par. Now, what does that mean? That the new Kayin can come in with the blood of the par, or he have his own par. So Rabbi Chanina Amar b'par v'lei b'dami shel par. He can't come in just with the blood of the par. He has to have actually shech the par. That means he needs a brand new one. It says the par with a bull. Rish Lakish Amar b'par v'afila b'dami shel par. I don't know where he gets that from. When it says b'par, it means the blood of the par. I think what's happening is we're looking at the blood of the par and we're trying to say, is this what the Torah is calling? Look, he's coming in with the par. What do you mean? He's not taking a bull in, he's taking the blood in. And this must be the par. The blood is the par. The other way would be looking at it saying the par, not that he goes in with the par. Through the par, he goes in because he's shechted, but you need a real par. There's two ways of reading this pasuk. So now the question, and the nafkamina is, of course, if he didn't do the shechita, if he just shows up after the first Kayan passed away and wants to just take the blood in, is he able to come in? Okay, so we have machlokes Rabbi Chanina and Rish Lakish. Now it goes down to the next generation as well. Rabami Amar b'par b'lei b'dami shel par. That would be Rabbi Chanina's opinion as well. Rabbi Yitzchak Amar, actually it's probably Rabbi Yitzchak Nachman. Rabbi Yitzchak Amar b'par v'afilu b'dami shel par. So another machlokes. Rabbi Yitzchak Nachman, thank you. Rabbi Yitzchak would be similar to Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yitzchak Nachman. Okay. Esvi Rabami Rabbi Yitzchak. So Rabami asked Rabbi Yitzchak a question. Rabami was Rabbi Chanina's opinion, and Rabbi Yitzchak was Rish Lakish's opinion. So Rabami held that the second Kayin needs to re-slaughter, to slaughter anew a par. And Rabbi Yitzchak said, no, you can use the old one. So Rabami has a question. Nimnin u'moishchin yadeyan ad she'yishchet. Talking about the Korban Pesach. People join with the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach needs to be with a chabura, with a group. It's only for those people that have registered. So you can register, and you could deregister until the shechita. Ad she'yishchet. Now, the im isa. Now, if you're going to say that the blood of the animal is considered the animal. So it says, based on the pasuk, it says, there's a pasuk that says that they join together with the lamb, over the lamb for the carbon pesach, over the lamb. If it's still considered the lamb after it's slaughtered, right? If having the blood is still considered the lamb, so why only until the shechita? It should be further on until the blood is sprinkled. Until the blood is sprinkled, it should be. This is his question to Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, that says that when it says bepar with the bull, it means the blood of the bull. So therefore, when it says the lamb, it should be with the blood of the lamb. And you should have extra time. How much time are you gaining? You're gaining an extra 60 seconds from the shechita till the zrika. They should be allowed to deregister or register onto that group, onto that conference. Okay. The Gemara answers, Shani Hassam, what's the Aleph supposed to be? Yeah, it's supposed to change it to Shani. Shani Hassam, Diktiv, Miyois Miseh. In Yemata Bias Miyois Miseh. Okay, that's how it is. That if there's too few people, then they join together with another household. It says, Mechiyusid the Seh, from the life of the Seh. So we have a drasha here. And what the drasha is doing is it's saying that when it comes to the lamb, you're right. It's still a seh, possibly. It's still a seh, even when you only have the blood in your hand. You have the seh. That's like the condensed seh. There's the blood of the seh, is the lamb. But that doesn't tell me anything about if you're allowed to register, because the register has a special pasuk that says that the seh needs to be alive. Okay. Which basically means I don't have an answer to the other way either. To if it's considered, the blood is considered the animal or not. Massive marzucha. Ein paidin, you can't redeem. We're talking about the petach hamar, the redemption of a donkey, with the firstborn donkey. It's supposed to be redeemed with a sheep, right? Ein paidin lei be'egel, not with a calf. That's a young cow. Lei b'chaya, not with a wild animal. Lei b'shchuta, not with an animal that's shechted already. Lei b'treifa, not with an animal that even said yeah, that's going to be the point. Lei b'treifa, not with an animal that's going to die. Lei b'kalayim can be a mixed breed, a hybrid of a goat and a sheep. Can you do that? No. Can you mix them? Oh, I don't know. That's a Rashi. Well, Rashi says that it's a goat and a sheep. No, he's asking practically. Will it have a child? Will it have a lot? I don't know. What? Someone said this geneticist from Colombia, he's learning which Masech it was. Yeah, it was the Gemara Mida that has all of those types of offspring. When it says Shitame, if she sees a child that looks like this or like that. Remember, remember that Mary had a little lamb. So, and the doctor painted. So this guy from Colombia, he says he's learning the doc. So people are saying this is impossible. He says, no, I do it in the lab. It's not impossible. Okay. So, right, talking about Pidyon, Petach Hamar. So, V'loi B'kai, or Kvi, that's how we translated a Kvi. It's an animal that we don't know if it's a wild animal or if it's a domesticated animal. I forget what they would translate it as, buffalo or something. Ela b'seh, you can only use a lamb. Well, we just said that like the shchuta, right? Can't be shechted already. 1 second. Why not? It's still the blood is you still have the blood. The Gemara says, Shani Hasan the Aleph says semi Pesach. We learn from Pesach. Just by Pesach, it needs to be alive, right? So too we learn from here. You're going to get yourself into trouble if you're going to compare it to Pesach. Now you're going to need, it needs to be within its first year. It needs to be only a male. It needs to be a tam. You never said it needs to be a tam. Just because it can't be a treifa. Treifa means that it would die within 1 year with some illness. But that doesn't mean it can't have a blemish. Blemish is a split eyelid or a split lip. That's not going to die. But nevertheless, it's not good for a carbon. So Talmud Leimer tifta riba. It's the pasuk says v'im behema tifta v'im loy sifta. So we're taking the tifta off the v'im loy sifta. So it has two tiftas, right? So that includes the Gemara says, well, that sounds good for us. Tifta riba filu kulanami. So why don't you include everything? So in Cain, semi hanilais, but it says seh. What are you going to do with seh? Seh means that it can only be a lamb. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that it's going to include even animals that have a mum, and even if it's not the first year. And we're going to exclude all the others because it's compared to a carbon pesach. Okay. Esi Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha l'Rabami. On top of Daf Nun. We're going the other way now. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha held, like Rish Lakish, that the blood is considered the animal. And Rabami holds that it's not considered the animal. It says, V'haitzias kol apar. This is by the sacrifice. This is the Parka and the Mashiach. There's several sacrifices that the blood is sprinkled inside the sanctuary, and then instead of burning the fat on the altar, instead of burning the limbs on the altar, you take the entire animal out and it's burnt outside the. So. You see that even after the shechita, you have to remove the animal. Now, what we're seeing is that it's still considered a par even after the blood was taken out. Well, our point over here isn't after the blood is taken out. Our point is the other way. Can it be considered a par after its death, after the shechita? The Gemara answers, sheyetzi eskulei. That's the whole answer. This was like a quick question and answer. What we're saying is not that it's really called a par. What we're saying is everything that remains from the par. Don't be medayik over there. Sheyotzias kol par means that you're calling a carcass a bull. You're calling it the remains of the bull. Okay. Veis parachatas, veis sirachatas. Okay, this is an interesting question. It says, and the par, which is the bull of the sin offering, and the goat of the sin offering, which were brought inside. Amar of Papa, you see, the problem here is the blood was brought inside, and the carcass is taken out to be burned. And we're talking about the carcass, and we're calling it par and sa'ir. Amar of Papa, ba'aru basaru perish to kol yam leitligi. When it comes to the skin, the flesh, and the insides, that could be called a par. However, that doesn't affect us. We're not discussing that. We're discussing specifically the blood. Keep ligi. Bedam. We're discussing the blood. Is the blood called the par? Marsa v'dam ekripar, marsa v'dam ekripar. And that's what we were discussing originally. Is the blood called the par? Right? And it takes us back to if the kohen passes away and he has to come inside the sanctuary with the par, can he just come with the blood even though he never slaughtered the par? Amar Ravashi, mistabrik mandamar dam ekripar. Ravashi says it's most probable. Like the opinion that says that dam ikri par. This is Rish Lakish's opinion. This is Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha's opinion. the blood is considered the par. The ksiv. This was the raya we were discussing. But this Aaron comes in to the holies with the bull of 1 year old. Atu bekarni ma'ayalei. Does he bring it in by the horns? Ela bedamai. He's only bringing in the blood, and it says that with this he comes in with the bull. And what is he holding in his hand? He's holding blood. Bekari lepar. It's a very strong raya. Umar says v'idaf. What does the other opinion say? It says what allows, what prerequisites are there that Aaron should come into the holies? It's the prerequisite that Aaron needs to be able to come in. Not that he comes in holding it in his hand. He's not bringing the bull in his hand. He had to slaughter it outside. And if that's the case, so who would hold Parvim Bakar? Holds that he doesn't need to slaughter it outside. One that holds, let's say Rish Lakish's opinion that holds that you can come in, you don't need a new carbon. So he holds Parvim Bakar means you don't need the new kayan doesn't need a new par. You can use the old one. He holds that the Zais Yaviyar and Ala Kaidash, the Parvim Bakar, the par means the blood. The other one holds that no, Rabbi Chanina holds that no, that the par means the par. And how does it say it comes in? It says that this is a prerequisite for him to come in. I mean, the new kayan needs to do it again. The Tepaklei the Chatas Shemesu Baleh. The Gemara is a very interesting question. We've all been discussing this like theoretically, but we didn't think about it practically. There's a technical problem here. Any sin offering that the owner passed away, the sin offering is put to death. There's 5 chatayos hameses. One of them is if the owner died. You can't bring it, the children can't bring it, because he already received his atonement by the death. So, the chatas shemesu baleh lemisa asla. So, what are you telling me that there's a possibility that a new kayan can bring it? You have to remember that the par was an atonement for the kayan gadol and his family. He passed away, so it's chatas shemesu baleh. Amalei Ravavin bar Ravada l'Rava. Amri Talmida. Ravin bar Ravada says to Rava, your student said, Amar Rav Amram, that Rav Amram said, Chatas tzibur hi v'lei lemisa asla. Interesting teretz. It's not a chatas hayachid, even though it's for Aaron himself, but it's not a chatas hayachid. Chatas hayachid, it's not a private sacrifice. This has to do with if we say the community doesn't die. The individuals pass away, but the community is always there. So if you don't, if a carbon tzibur, if someone dies from the tzibur, it's still the tzibur. Okay. Ditanan. We start in the Mishnah. Amalei Rab Meir. This is in Masechtas Tzmura. Balei par Yom Kippurim v'chaviti ken gadol u'Pesach the carbon yachadu v'deiches Shabbos v'satama. Okay. Reb Meir is arguing, and he's saying that the bull on Yom Kippur, the chaviti kain gadol, that's the offering, the meal offering that the kain gadol brings every day, and the carbon Pesach, all of those are individual sacrifices, and nevertheless, they push off Shabbos and they push off Tumah. And as opposed to only community offerings that could push off Shabbos. It says, Lav Mechlal, the fact that the mayor is saying that is he not saying Dikalamanda Amar the Tzibur? That someone must tell, you see, he's arguing. He's saying, look at these things, these are private offerings. Obviously, the other opinion holds that they're community offerings. See, the other opinion holds that the par of Yom Kippur is a community offering. See, that's our proof. Umar says, I don't like the proof. That's your proof. Diktani Yamalei Rabbi Yaakov responds to him, The carbon tzibur. Rabbi Yaakov says that I have a par helm davar shel tzibur.
These are people ones, and they're still not doing that.
Yeah.
They're not going to take the clean up the video.
Yeah. So we're not going to say. See, we made an assumption. Reb Meir lists a few sacrifices and says, "See, these are carbon yachid sacrifices, and nevertheless they push off Shabbos and Tumah." So our assumption was, if Reb Meir says these are carbon yachid individuals, probably the other opinion holds of their community. That was our assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Now we say that's not a correct assumption, because if you continue with that assumption, you try to read Reb Yaakov, he lists sacrifices that are clearly community sacrifices. And he says, look, here are community sacrifices that don't push off Shabbos. What are you going to now assume? That there's another opinion that says these are carbon yachid, based on the way that you read things. Par helm davar shel tzibur, which that's when the Bezdin makes a mistake, and the community follows that mistake, and so they have to bring a sacrifice. And Siri Aved's Kechavim, if there was a mistake about Avodah Zarah, and Chagiga. What's Chagiga? Chagiga, we have to see what that is. The Gemara will explain. The carbon tzibur, Rabbi Yaakov says those are clearly community sacrifices. And they don't push off Shabbos and Tumah. Mechlal, the Ikalam the Amar, the Yachid. That's like a whole question. That means, according to your assumption, you're going to say that someone holds that those are all private sacrifices. Ella l'tanakama kamahadale. Reb Meir was just responding to the Tanakama, and he says like this: the Shami, the Kamar carbon tzibur deichel Shabbos v'esatuma, the carbon yachid in the deichel Shabbos v'esatuma. He heard that the Tanakama says what types of sacrifices push off Shabbos and push off Tumah? Only community sacrifices. So comes along Reb Meir, Amalei Reb Meir, carbon yachid, klalahu. You want to say that that's a general rule, that every individual sacrifice doesn't push off Shabbos, can't be brought on Shabbos, can't be brought in impurity. The carbon yachid, you see that these do push off. So he's just arguing with the rule that the Tanakama was saying, not that they hold that this is a carbon tzibur. They had a rule. He's bringing these as examples that the rule doesn't work, or that they're exceptions. But he's using the exceptions to show that the rule doesn't work. So, but not to say that the Tanakama is going to argue with him that these are carbon tzibur. Of Amalei Rabbi Yaakov says carbon tzibur klalo, and you want to say that carbon tzibur is also a rule, that if it's a carbon tzibur, it automatically pushes off. In other words, Reb Meir was arguing with the Tanakama. Tanakama said carbon yachid doesn't push off. He said, oh yes, it does. Take a look. We have the animal on Yom Kippur. It's a carbon yachid that pushes off. Then Rabbi Yaakov says in carbon tzibur always does. Look, we have other animals that are carbon tzibur that don't push off Shabbos and Tumah. The carbon tzibur, rather, here's the rule. We come out with the rule after this discussion. If it has a set time, Pesach has a set time, it's going to push off Shabbos and Tumah. Afilu biyachid, even if it's a private sacrifice. Then even a community sacrifice, if it doesn't have a set time, then why you have to do it on Shabbos? It's not going to be done for Shabbos because you can do it during the week. Yeah, in the yeshiva, my students are always like, I have to make a call right now. I got a message. Why don't you call during the break? No, it's important. I have to call right now. It pushes off Shabbos. Like, it's 1 second, but you could do it anytime. It doesn't have to. I know it's important. Okay. So, okay, Esvei Abaya. This was a long discussion. We were trying to figure out Chatas Shemesu Balel. How did we even have this question of can the new Kayan offer the sacrifice of the old Kayan, of the old Kayan Gadol, if he passed away? It was a carbon Chatas. And if the owner of a carbon Chatas passes away, then the owner of a sin offering passes away, then the inheritors or whatever cannot bring that old sacrifice. So how did he even have a question? We have based on another rule, it shouldn't work. So we were saying, well, it's a carbon siva. That was our answer. Easy answer. Esvei Abaya. Was that clearly our answer? Is that clearly how we finish this? In between, after he slaughtered, just died. Yeah. In those days, people would just die. That's a good question. So, it looks like from the notes here, it looks like it passes like Rishla, that the new Kayan can come in with the blood of the par. That's what it looks like. You would have the halacha there. I don't know. You have the halacha in this. Esvei Abaya. Abaya has a question. Par b'star shel Yom Kippurim, the par and the goat of Yom Kippur, she'avdu, that got lost. The hifrish shacherim tachteim. So they designated other animals. So kulam yamusu. They all need to be put to death when they find the first ones, yeah, because it's called the chatas shekipur bala. The owners were atoned already. So then, what do you do with the new sacrifices? There's no sin left. You have a question? Buried? Yeah. Don't look at this like it's insensitive. It's just dealing with every detail. Yeah. What's your first name? Ian? Ian was asking that the Kayan passed away. You're worried about the animal with the That's going to be discussed, how to get the Kayan out and bury him and all of that. Yeah, this is just discussing. Every detail is important. We have to discuss these details as well. Remember, there was a woman that lived next to. I forget what her situation was, but it was in a difficult situation. She lived near the smicha program when we were learning smicha. So one time she says, she complained that the bachrim weren't sensitive to her or whatever. She says, you spend all day learning about the stomach of a cow, but you never learn about the heart of a woman. It was a great line, but that wasn't the point. You have to learn about the stomach of the cow also. Okay. Yeah. Esvei Abaya. Abaya has a question. Par b'sar shel Yom Kippurim shavdu v'hifrish achem tachteim kulam yamusu. All of the ones that were not offered, that were found, they have to be put to death. And the same would apply to the goat that was brought for idolatry. If there was a mistake in what's considered idolatry and they worship, so then when they found the original one, it's put to death. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, or Rabbi Shimon Imrim, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say it's not put to death. This has a different category. Normally, you're right. Normally, if the owner was atoned, it's chatas shekipur bala, it's put to death. But here it's different. here it's a carbon tzibur. It's not directly put to death. You let it get a mum, which means you put it into the pan, you let it graze until it gets some sort of wound. And once it has a wound, then it's not eligible to be a carbon, and then you sell it, and then it could be sold for regular meat. What do you do with the money that you got? That's going to go to the temple fund for the other sacrifices. Shein chatas tzibur mesa, because you don't put to death the chatas tzibur. Amar lei. Who's the Amar lei? Who is that? Rava? Oh, Rava's responding to Abaye. So 1 second. So what's Abaye's question? What's Abaye's question? How did Rava get into this? Rava. Rav Avin Bar Ada said to Rava that your students say that this is considered a chatas at tzibur. Okay. Now Abaya is saying to Rava, Par b'sar sheyem kippurim is considered a chatas tzibur. Why is that a question? I'm not sure why that's a question, but we're seeing clearly that this is considered a chatas tzibur, and our question is it going to be, what's the status of a chatas tzibur? Amalei, my par, what does it mean par? When it says par b'sar shel Yom Kippurim, it's par helem davar shel tzibur. It's not referring to the par of Yom Kippur. It's referring to the par helem davar shel tzibur, which is brought if the Sanhedrin makes a mistake. The Gemara says that's not a good answer because v'hashel Yom Kippurim katani, because it says the par of Yom Kippur. So you can't switch it on us like that. So it says ki katani adasar. It says par. Look, you have to read it like this: par b'sar shel Yom Kippurim. The par was talking about the par, the bull of the par helm davar shel tzibur. Par kama b'sar shel Yom Kippurim. The Gemara says 1 second. V'atanya par shel Yom Kippurim b'sar shel Yom Kippurim shavda v'hifresh hachem tachtem kulim mimus divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon Yirat she'istava yivimkru yiplu d'meam lenadavar shein chatas tzibur mesa. He quotes a brisa to us, telling us that we have one which is spelt out even more clearly, where it says par of Yom Kippur and the sar of Yom Kippur. So don't tell me par v'sar of Yom Kippur. The Yom Kippur part is only going on the sar, only going on the goat, and the part is talking about something else. Because we have a brisa that spells it out clearly, and over there we see what it actually means. So the Gemara says, "Lo tema shein chatas tzibur mesa, leima shein chatas hashutvim mesa." It's not a chatas tzibur. It's a chatas hashutvim. It's partners. What does that do for us? Right. What does that do for us with our Damai Shopar? We are getting into this because how does the Kohen Gadol go in with a sacrifice that the owner died? We said, well, maybe it was a chatas tzibur. So he said, no. Now we're saying it's not a chatas tzibur. It's a chatas yachid. We said, no, it's not a chatas yachid either. It's a chatas hashutrim. The Gemara says, "Amay nafkamina." What's the difference? If it's not getting put to death, so I missed one point. Rava before did not accept what Rav Amram said. Yeah. Rava didn't accept. Rav Amram said that the par of Yom Kippur was a carbon tzibur. Rava doesn't accept that. Abai asks him, you see it's a carbon tzibur. And Rava says, no, it's not a carbon tzibur. That carbon tzibur part was only going on the soyer, the par didn't mean the par of Yom Kippur. He said, no, it clearly does. So Rava's still like under pressure. He's holding out, and he's saying, well, it doesn't mean a carbon tzibur, it means of shutfin. So, well, 1 second. If that's the same rule, whether it's a carbon tzibur or shutfim, it's not put to death. So what's the difference? Right. So if one person dies, the other owner is still there. Come up with an interesting. If there was a bezdin of kayanim, you see that there's this halacha about if the community sins, the majority of the community sins, so they have to bring a special sacrifice. Now, if that was a bezdin of kayanim in the group of kayanim sin, so would it be considered a community or would it be considered partner sin? So what we're saying is that it's just considered partners. It's not considered a community. Kayanim are considered partners. So when the par, which was brought for the kayan gadol and for his family and for his brothers, the kayanim, is really partners, not a community.
Kayanim are or not?
Are yes considered partners, not considered community.
When it says Amalei, that's
Amalei, Isvei Abaya, and Amalei was Rava responding, yeah.
And how do we know this is Rava?
Because Isvei Abaya was.
Abaya and Rava always arguing.
Yeah. So. Yeah, where did this come in?
You asked it, and I never got
earlier before Amalei Ravin bar Rav Adel the Rava Amri Talmidcha Amr Rav Amram Chatas Tzibur V'Leila Misa Asla, and then he brings this brisa. So Amr Loi Ula Taimech is Rava responding according to you. So that's Rava. Yeah, that's the difficulty. Okay. Yitzi says he has another proof that they're partners because they stabbed each other when they were running up the. Tashima.
Only good friends would do that.
The boy Rabbi Lazar asked the question. The Divrei Ha'imet. Par Yom Kippurim Karban Yachid. There's a question that was asked. The par for Yom Kippur, that's the one that we've been discussing the whole time. According to the one that says that it's a Karban Yachid, it's an individual sacrifice. Aisa Tmura, Ain Aisa Tmura. Can it make Tmura? Tmura is, if I take one sacrifice, one animal that was designated as a sacrifice, and I say that instead of this animal, there's going to be this animal, it's going to be a new animal, it's going to be a sacrifice. So the rule is that both of them become consecrated. They both become sanctified, and it's also a prohibition. You're not allowed to do that. So it doesn't make Tmura. Now, if it's an individual sacrifice, then it clearly would make Tmura. So the way this question was posed was, would the par of Yom Kippur make Tmura, or is it considered a carbon tzibur, which shouldn't make Tmura? So he says, L'divrei ha'omer par Yom Kippur carbon yachid, I said Tmura. That means lav machlal. Does that not imply Dikal mandamar de tzibur, that there is someone that says that it's a community sacrifice? Where it says light. Someone says that they're partners. That it doesn't tell me. It's either a yachid, not as opposed to tzibur, it's a yachid as opposed to shutfim. It's a partner. Okay, Gufa. We learned before, we go back to examine what we mentioned. Will the par of Yom Kippur make Tmura? What's the Gemara's question? If you go after the one that sanctified it, if you go after the people that are being atoned for it. So there's two people. There's the one that's offering it, and it's being offered by an individual. But who's getting atonement for it? That's a whole bunch of people. So the Gemara says, Pshita the Basar Miskaper is linan. Obviously, we're going to go after the ones that are being atoned. In other words, the sacrifice here is atoning for the whole congregation. And that's going to be the main part of the sacrifice. We should follow, our question is regarding Tmura, we should follow the people that are being atoned. It's going to get clear when you see this statement. Rabbi Vo says the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan was the main teacher there, and Rabbi Vo was a student. Hamakdish Meisif Chaimish Bamiskaper Meisif Batmura. There's halachas that apply specifically to the owner of something that's sanctified. When you redeem, if the owner himself redeems something that was sanctified, he has to add 1/5. So, let's say you have two owners. Well, it's not really two owners, but there's a sacrifice that's being designated by one person to atone for another person. So, who's considered the owner? So, when it comes to if it gets a moment, it needs to be redeemed. It has a blemish. So hamiskaper, hamakdish meisif chaimish, the one that consecrated it, he's the one that has to pay the extra fifth. However, hamiskaper isabat tmura, but the miskaper is the one that's being atoned for. He's the one that's able to make tmura. Well, what we're seeing now is that you follow the one that's getting the atonement when it comes to Tmura. So that would tell me that the par of Yom Kippur is not the Kayin Gadol's par, it's all the Kayinim's par. Now, if someone wants to take Truma, takes his own Truma from himself, but he wants this Truma from his own produce to fix someone else's produce. Now, who gets the rights to where this truma is going to go?
Like the person using his own miles for someone else. Oh, it's gorgeous. Oh, can you do that? Yeah.
The Gemara says the Eilam.
No idea.
We say over here that the one that takes the truma can give it to any one of his friends or relative kayanim that he wants to. Let's say he has a grandson that's a kayan, his son-in-law is a kayan, so he can give it to them. So the Gemara says, "Lo'ilam pshitlei the basar miskaper is linan." You're right. Obviously, you follow the miskaper, the people that it's being atoned for. Now, and this was his question. Echav hakayanim b'kviyusim miskapri yedilma b'kufi miskapri. It's a very interesting way of putting this. Do each of the kayanim have a portion of this karban? In other words, the karban is divided up. Let's say there's 100 kayanim. So 1% of each of this karban belongs to each of the kayanim, and it's like actually divided, that the karban actually works like that. Or maybe b'kufi miskapri, once the Kayan Gadol gets atonement, it automatically atones for everyone else, but it's not like designated for all the Kayanim. That's the Gemara's question. The Gemara's question is, how do the Kayanim get kapara here? I know they get kapara, but is it just because they get sort of like grandfathered in? The Kayan Gadol got kapara, so that we just overlook them and they get kapara? Or is it really a karban for each of the Kayanim? So Tashima. The question is it a private sacrifice or a community sacrifice? That's the basic question. Tashima chaymer bezevach mi b'tmura. Actually, let me leave it right here by this Tashima. Let's leave the Gemara right there. Okay.
Rich on.